Sheltering in place with other people from whom we cannot escape has been a significant daily reminder of our interdependence and relationality as humans. There have been some days where we jokingly and lovingly relieve a little stress by shouting and laughing, "I don't want to be around any of you anymore." We really do love one another, and we really have had quite enough of each other some days. Sometimes you just need to say that truth out loud, because in our household, one person's bad day is contagious. One person takes out their stress or anger or disappointment or grief on another person, who passes it to another person, and it spreads all around. Though we each exist in separate bodies, we are not separate. We are relational. And when one person is hurting, all of us feel it in some way. This Trinity Sunday, we recall that God's very essence is relational. God is 3 in 1, not singular. As humans created in God's image, we are also relational. We are in relationship to God, and we are in relationship to one another. We cannot be separate from others. Our health and our well-being is not separate from others. Coronavirus itself has reminded us of this, that one person's health impacts the health of many, that one person's breath becomes another person's breath. Contact tracing, that one, shows just how connected we are, how many touch points exist between us, even at a time when many remain sheltered in place. God is relational. We are relational. So God tells us in many ways that we must care for one another. God reminds us of the imperative to spread love, not fear, not hatred, because the health of one is the health of all. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, "Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." Until there is justice for everyone, there is justice for no one. We cannot be whole until everyone is whole. We cannot have peace until everyone has peace. The prophet Micah reminds us that it is not the outward signs of holiness that matter, not burnt offerings, not even if one offers 1,000 rams and 10,000 rivers of oil. Such shows of holiness do not put one in right relationship with one's neighbor. Instead, Micah says, "Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Tend to your relationships with one another and be humble before God. We will only be whole in relationship to one another." Paul writes to the church in Corinth while he cannot be with them in person, even while separated from one another. His final appeal in his letter is that they tend to their relationality, live in peace, live in the communion of the Holy Spirit, have unity, love one another. For us to be the church today means we care for one another, that we seek justice for one another, that we stand in unity with those who are oppressed. I have seen the church this week, as white allies showed up to stand between police and Black protesters, white allies putting their bodies on the line for the safety of Black bodies. As I read public apologies from those who didn't understand Colin Kaepernick's protest, but now finally see the urgency of the grave injustices and the cost of racism. It should not have taken another Black man's death. We who are white should have listened long ago. We should have defended justice long ago. We should have been deconstructing white privilege and white supremacy all along. But today, church, we are seeing calls to action. We are being called to honor and defend Black lives. We are being called to dismantle systemic racism. How can we do justice? How can we love kindness? How can we walk humbly with God in this moment of history? What are you doing? Today, I invite our worship of our God, who is in essence relational, to be attending of our relationships with our neighbors, especially our neighbors who are people of color, especially our neighbors who are Black. My sermon is short today because instead of writing, I spent this week reading, watching, and listening. Listening to the voices of Black people, reading the words of Black people, witnessing racism on full display, witnessing racism thinly veiled, and witnessing folks working on anti-racism, standing, kneeling, shouting, marching, in loud silence, and even in rioting. I can share my resources and what actions I'm taking, but I want you to share yours too. So let's take our moment of silent reflection, our moment of musical reflection from Ron, and then we'll share and support one another in our work and ministry, being the church through anti-racism.